Me.
Good morning, Jake. How you doing?
Good, bud. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Welcome to episode 69 of the Coffee Squad podcast. Today we're going to be talking about overseas travel. You just came back from overseas, so I kind of figured, what better person than to ask what it's like to travel over there and what some things we should do prior to traveling than somebody who just spent a little bit of time overseas.
Yeah, no, I think it's I can tell you things have changed, but I don't think they've changed that much. The biggest thing, and we'll jump into this, is the COVID testing, the PCR testing, not the rapid test, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But I don't know. Again, I travel a lot internationally, so I would say we'll kind of break it down too for someone who doesn't travel as much and try to keep it to the basics and not hit all the high points too.
Yep, absolutely.
So,
yeah. Okay.
I thought maybe you're talking about overseas travel since, we got this hurricane bearing down on us. I think it's supposed to be clear tonight, tomorrow, tropical storm, whatever it's called now. So I thought maybe, with you being on the coast, maybe you're thinking of you're getting swept away. And
I don't know. I've been, Arizona and what is it? Arizona and New Mexico, Nevada, they've been looking kind of good lately with all these hurricanes and storms the last few years.
Yeah, I think you should change it to out to sea travel because that's kind of what you're going to do.
Out to sea.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to be in the West Coast here in a little bit. You better be careful. You might jinx yourself and they'll have a earthquake and you'll fall off. So
earthquakes aren't that bad as long as you're not in a big building.
Or outside of one.
Yeah, or outside of one.
So, or along the fault.
Yeah. Cool. So right before the podcast, whoa, what are you drinking, man? I thought you were drinking that I'm gonna call it Kathmandu cat poop coffee.
So I would, but it's a little early for a alcoholic drink for me. I usually wait till at least
7:30 in the morning.
12:30, at least after lunch, right?
Okay.
And,
all right.
That is a Black Rifle Coffee Company Silencer Smooth. It's a blonde roast. It's just nice, easy roast. One of my go-tos when it comes to the light roast from them. What about you?
And there's nothing new, man. The Waterloo blueberry, natural flavored little drink, and then just good old. Oh, you can't see the cup. It's green.
No, I can't.
Green on a green screen. I planned that one well, but my normal H2O. So
what was your other drink?
I think it was disgusting.
I do have some water. I don't know if you can see it. Probably it's squishy. It's a Simpsons thing. I'm a Simpsons fan. I took my girls down to Myrtle Beach, and they have the Quickie Mart Simpsons little thing. So we went there. So I had to get me a souvenir cup.
Gotcha. Yeah, I never watched The Simpsons. I wasn't allowed to as a kid. I just never got into it. So
no.
Well, cool. Let's jump into this, man.
I feel bad. How do you not ever watch this? That's just crazy. Okay.
I don't like Star Wars either, man. I mean, we're gonna have this.
We've already discussed this because you're not a movie guy. You only like, The Notebook and stuff like that. So,
hey, everyone has to have a sensitive side to them sometimes, I mean, look,
that's what Old Yeller is for.
That you came over the backyard, we're having, swimming. I put on The Notebook, and next thing I know, like you're leaning on my shoulder crying. I mean, I didn't tell that to everybody, but now they know.
Well, I'm a sympathy crier. When you started crying, I couldn't help but start crying. So,
I just did that to see if you'd cry.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
So, all right. So let's hop into the subject real quick and get this going. How have things changed internationally since COVID, since you have been overseas? So
I would just say, like I kind of mentioned earlier at the start of things, I would say all my flights were full. And that was here in the U.S. going overseas. So I went over the Middle East. I went over to Jordan, and we took not Swiss Air, Austrian Air out of D.C. So, and they just reminded. So if you're flying into Austria, Germany, you have to wear a the K95 mask. And so some airlines and countries are requiring you to wear a certain specific mask over just like a regular, have it here on my desk, but I wear like that outdoor
Look
research.
at like an N95 or something, or a blue one of
Yeah,
those
the
blue masks.
N95. So you're flying into Germany, Austria. We didn't know this either. That's the type of mask you have to have. Luckily for us and for the kiosk vendor there and at IED at Dulles, he was selling N95 mask and making hands over fist on it. But
Oh, I bet.
good for him. So that, find out if you're traveling to a country on a specific airline, if they have specific face mask guidelines, which ones they want you to wear. That was the first experience I had with that. As long as you had a face mask, no one really cared. And, you can't fly with the ones with the vents anymore. And you can't fly with a bandana anymore. But you just have a normal like medical mask that you get the doctor's office, or, I would say you're fine.
That's what I usually use flying domestically anyways.
Yeah.
Obviously I haven't done any overseas travel, but domestically I have flown more this year than I probably have the last 5 years combined, just because of circumstances. And yeah, definitely the flights are a lot fuller. I remember most of the time back in the day, you usually have a fairly half to 3/4 full flight. Now they're kicking people off because it's so full. So
yeah, I just read somewhere a guy made like $1,500 for getting bumped off a flight. So your mask, have it, be prepared to wear it. It is federally mandated.
And they will wake you up to make you put it back on.
Yeah. So in the U.S. airports to wear it. One thing that's changed as long as you were eating or drinking, you could have your mask down. And there's probably too many people like me who just kept eating the whole time on the flight and drinking. So now they want you to put it up in between bites. I've yet to see anyone really enforce that. And I've flown, besides the Middle East, I was out in California. I'll be flying quite a bit here in the next few weeks as well. But I've yet to see anyone like super enforce it. And really, it's airline dependent and it's stewardess dependent. Do they really want to fight with you? So I'll tell you, Austrian Air was phenomenal. Probably some of the best food I've had, and the guy I went over with, we're like, wow, some really good food. So that was good. They weren't what I call like a mask Nazi. They just would like, hey, sir, you're done eating. Can you put it on? I think like when I slept, again, it was like a 9.5 hour flight, and my mask was like just over my mouth. It would slip down. I never got woken up. I'd wake up and put it back on. So again, I'm not looking to get in an argument on a flight. That's the requirements. Yeah, it's a choice to fly. So that's just
rules you got to play by them.
Yeah. So I'd say airports are definitely more crowded than they were 4 or 5 months ago, even like 2 months ago. So flying back from California, flying into, Texas, yeah, it's definitely more full. So just, be prepared. Just have your face mask on. Again, there's some people who want to make a protest about it. They're not going to win. Look, again, we just said it right. If you want to fly, that's the rules you got to play by. Whether you like it, don't like it, disagree with it. It's like living in your parents' house and then putting a curfew on you when you're in your college age. Like, hey, if you don't like it, move out. Or don't go there. So, checkpoints, security checkpoints, the same. I'm TSA pre-check and global entry, so that always makes things a lot easier just to go through.
What about the restaurants and stores? I know when I flew through in March through DFW, and then again last month through DFW, and I noticed more stores and restaurants were open, but they're still closing early. Like I remember back in the day, they used to stay open there were certain ones that would stay open 24/7, and it doesn't seem to be like that anymore.
No, so definitely, I would say not half. And I think it's airport dependent. So I can tell you in Austria, their international lounge was like going to some podunk town in the middle of America where everything was shut down, closed. There was one little like coffee snack place, maybe two. And so, 4.5, 5 hour layover, it kind of sucked. Not a lot of chairs, but so Austria was shut down pretty good. In Jordan, I'd say almost everything was open, and it was open late. And I was flying into Amman, which is the largest airport there. I'd say Dulles and Houston in California. I'd say a majority of the stores are now open. So be prepared. Another thing, if you're flying within the U.S., it doesn't matter if it's first class or coach. Be prepared to bring your own food on a long flight. Yep. Short flights, you're just going to get it, maybe if you're lucky,
some pretzels,
like a bag of pretzels. But even like flying East Coast to West Coast, first class, you get a little snack box now. So if you're looking for that meal, that kind of thing, if that's what you're used to, that stopped with COVID. And I don't know if that's coming back until these airlines start making up the money that they lost through COVID. So bring, stop at the store once you get past security checkpoint, or bring your own snacks and then stop at the store to get some water or drinks or something. Yep. I highly recommend that, especially if you're traveling with kids.
Now, do any of the airports or in the countries that you went to, did they require like a vaccine passport or proof that you'd had it, or a test or anything like that?
No. So test, yes. Vaccine passport, no. There's talk of an international QR code vaccine passport, but that's kind of quieted down last I checked. So some things to remember traveling internationally. If you're a U.S. citizen, make sure you have at least 6 months on your passport. Make sure you have enough room on your passport to get stamped. If you did what I did, I visited 3 other countries while I was in Jordan. And so make sure that you have enough entry and exit stamps to go in and out of all those countries. If not, they could delay your travel. And then make sure the PCR test, don't do the rapid test. Rapid test is not recognized on international flights. So make sure you actually go and do the PCR test at, 72 hours prior to your flight. And so that's a big thing people need to understand. 72 hours prior to your flight, not when you land at your final destination, but to your flight. So, especially when you're traveling internationally, because sometimes, you look at delays and everything else. So I was almost victim to, I think I could just do the rapid test. And luckily, I have a buddy who runs a thing. He swabbed me real quick and I got the test within about 12 hours. But again, that's lucky.
Now, you were gone quite a long time. Did you need another test to get back, or since you're a U.S. student, or
no? So you have to have going into the country and then coming out. They're not going to let you board the plane. So at Dulles, when we were getting on our international flight over to Austria and then down to Jordan, they check. So I wish I could show you here.
So that's just something to think about. If you do go to the country, you got to make sure that you know how and where to get a test prior to leaving.
Yeah. So if you travel internationally, like I'm going to pull mine up here. I don't know if you can see it, but in Jordan, they had a thing called BioLab. And this is, I don't know if you can see that, but anyways, it's a little QR code. It's in English and Arabic, basically saying on this date, this person got a COVID test and they're either positive or negative. I was negative. So I think I had 6 traveling back and forth PCR tests. So Jordan doesn't mess around, man. They take that Q-tip, man, and they shove that thing up there. I think they're scraping brain matter, and for me, that push a little extra deep just to get the brain matter I've left. So
now, did you have to show your proof in coming in and out of every country that you went into?
100%.
So you had to get all 3 extra ones while you're there, 2 or 3 extra tests.
Border crossing, yeah. So I went into Egypt on a boat. So leaving Jordan, I had to get it going into Egypt, and then I was in Egypt for less than 12 hours. And then I had to get it in Egypt coming back into Jordan.
Jeez.
So these lab companies are making hands over fist and money I should have invested in like a BioLab or something like that. And then I'm sure these countries are getting a kickback too. So, yeah.
Well, that's one thing to remember is when you do travel overseas, though, you are under their rules and laws. As Americans, we kind of are afforded a lot of rights and luxuries that other countries aren't. So we have to remember when you're traveling overseas to abide by their laws and customs and stuff like that.
Just know them prior to, like the State Department has a great website where you can figure out what's going on and look at the stuff and what's required in that country. If you go to the CIA fact book, they can tell you about the country and like more in-depth history and like currently what's going on. So that to me are two really good sites. And then what I always tell people too is, let's say you're going to Amman, Jordan. Well, look at the local newspapers. There's a Jordan Times. They're in English, so you can, if you're going to Afghanistan, you can get on Tolo News and they have an English version. So you can get on most countries and most major cities have an English version of their news articles or their news. So you can kind of find out what's going on.
I know you can go to Al Jazeera. I know you can go Al Jazeera and you can look at their website and they have worldwide news in English. So they do a pretty good job.
Does the same thing. Just kind of, do your own little research or your due diligence, like I always say, of where you're going. And then you can find out about their laws through the State Department. So I'll tell you, like, I've never hid that I'm American. I don't think that it's really possible. Just looking at me, I know I always have a beard. I just shaved that thing, but you can't hide that you're an American. Just the way we carry ourselves, we look, the way you are,
the clothes you wear,
like all that. So, like, I wear a baseball hat pretty much every day of my life except for right now. But I rocked a baseball hat, as long as I wasn't with a client. If I just, and another thing I tell people is don't make yourself an easy target. Walk around, walk, enjoy it, but always look over your shoulder every once in a while, kind of like carry yourself like, you're not going to take anyone's crap too. So I think the more aware you are, the less of a target you are. I don't care if that's here in the US that, if you're in Chicago or LA or somewhere else or in a foreign country, like I do the same thing there. I always carry a knife. And so I always find out, like, even here in the States or overseas, like, is a knife legal and what dimensions is legal? So what type of knife too? So those are a few things. Again, if your country requires a visa, make sure you have your visa prior to going. If you're doing work, do they require a work visa? If you're traveling for pleasure, certain countries may require a visa. And so make sure as you're planning this stuff out that, you're following their laws, because you will get turned away. Again, I think we already talked about it. Make sure your passport has 6 months left on it. And that's from not when you travel to the date you're flying out of country, coming back to the US. So I usually say, just make sure you have 7 months left on it.
I mean, I know me, usually when I get down to that last year, I just go ahead and redo my passport within the last 12 to 14 months.
So I think the one exception I want to say is the UK. Actually, I know it's the UK, but that was a few years ago, and I didn't have 6 months left on the passport. I had another passport I could have used, but just make sure you have at least 6 months. So the UK is one of those countries that, as long as it's valid, you're good, but you don't want to risk it. And then I've mentioned the State Department before, but they also have what's called the STEP program, the Smart Traveler Enrollment Program. I recommend everyone sign up for that and understand what that means. All you're basically doing is you're telling the State Department, hey, I'm coming to this country. And basically they can, if an emergency or something happens where they have to evacuate Americans, you have your contact email, all that information that they can get a hold of you. A lot of misnomers that I hear and see with a lot of Americans and people as well. I'm an American, I'll just go to the embassy. That's great. And yes, you can go to the embassy, but meeting with someone within the embassy for your average American isn't really going to happen. Now, if there's an emergency, absolutely, you show your passport, but then from there it gets a little different. But if you look at, the last time the U.S. actually evacuated people was China during COVID. Before that, like when ISIS was kicking off in Iraq, they weren't doing evacuations out of Iraq. So take that into consideration. The State Department, the last thing they want to do is be on the hook financially and responsibly for your safety and well-being. So unless you actually work for the State Department and you're part of the State Department mission, you're just an average American.
Well, it's always good to be enrolled in that program so they do know you, because if something like Benghazi happens, you're not going to want to go to the embassy, right? You won't be able to. So it's always good to know, have an alternative means of contact.
100%. So it's just good to know too. So I mean, even when I've gone on vacations down in South America, Central and South America, I still always enroll.
Now, what do you do? What do you do if you lose your passport or something? Do you keep a copy of it and carry that, or I mean, what do you do?
I always keep a copy on me. So, depending on where I'm at, I won't leave my passport in my hotel safe if the safe isn't locked and secured, and I can change it, so I'll just carry it on me. But depending on circumstances, I usually like to just keep a copy on me, and if not, I keep a copy at wherever I'm staying. And that way I can, if I were to lose it or something were to happen, I have the copy to show.
Okay, that makes sense. It's good to know, because you never know what's going to happen, and you might lose something like that. So that's a good point, though, is you got to know where your consulates and your embassies are. So if something like that does happen, though, so it's always good to kind of plan out where you're going and where your nearest ones are.
Yeah. So I do a lot of evacuation plans and stuff like that for companies. And honestly, that's the first thing that I tell them, look, the safest place, if you can get to, if that's not under attack, you just go to the consulate or the embassy if they're open and know their hours. There's always a Marine Guard 24/7 at the consulates, but some are at the embassy. Some of the consulates, it may not be. So, and then I always say, try and call before you go, the consulate or the embassy, and get the Marine One number, which is their number to that guard who's always on duty. So if you were an emergency, and you have something, like, you could call them and say, hey, I'm coming in. This is the kind of vehicle I'm driving, because most people are going to be panicking and worried. So you don't want to go up to an embassy that there's stuff going on, like violence going on.
Yeah, and try to get through.
Screeching up in the car at a rapid rate of speed when they're already on heightened alert. So it's always just, if you can get that number, that's always a good thing. So again, that goes into your pre-travel planning.
So speaking of pre-travel planning, what are some other things you do for your overseas trip? What are some things you look at just more as a tourist and not necessarily for business?
So both business and tourist. So for anything, I look at hotels. I look at ratings of hotels, and I look at, I read a lot of the reviews. And again, depending on where you're going, right? So in Egypt, they were hotels, but they were more like a Motel 6, if that. But so I'm not looking like comfort. Sure, like you want to get a good night's sleep, and you don't want cockroaches and bugs all over the place or stains on your sheets. But I look at safety. Safety and security. Has there been a security incident or any kind of major event that's happened not just at that hotel, but at surrounding hotels? I can tell you in Amman, Jordan, there was a terrorist attack in 2005. 4 suicide bombers, a husband and wife team and 2 males, strapped suicide vests on, and they hit the Sheraton. I forget the other 3. I want to say the Crown, but 3 or 4 hotels, all within a mile of each other. And we had some American counterparts that were staying at the hotel, and they didn't even know that. So again, like, do your research, right? And then again, know that, hey, in most third world countries, like, a guard isn't much different than a security guard here. You have some that are really good, and then you have some that are just absolutely atrocious, and you give them $5-10 and they're going to let you through. I can tell you, like, all the major places in Jordan, they have metal detectors and wands, and you have to put your stuff through an x-ray machine. I was just probing and testing, and I never once Same with the malls. I walked through, the alarm beeped because of my leg, and I just kept walking. No one stopped me.
Yeah.
So, so just be aware of like your surroundings. I always say don't stay on the first floor. Stay, somewhere where there's a fire exit, stairwell where you can get out if you had to. So, so just kind of think of, if you're going to a high threat, high risk area where terrorism is, I would say don't stay on the top floor. I'd say somewhere where you can, skimmy out, hop out your window.
Second or third floor is about your limit, at least for me.
So that's one thing I look at: hotels, security, safety, and reviews. Restaurants, same thing. Has there been criminal activity, terrorist activity in, near, or around that area? You can think of Israel. Jerusalem, Israel is a great example of this. Of coffee shops, that kind of thing. Look, if you're an American and you're showing up to Starbucks every day, but you don't want to look like an American, you look like an American, carrying your Starbucks cup anywhere and everywhere you go. So there's Starbucks. There's globalization. There's a lot of your normal comfort items in most countries. So look at restaurants. Do the same thing. Security, and then again, food poisoning. Go to on travel blogs too, like backpacking travel blogs are a really good source of information.
There's a lot of blogs out there by expats talking about the countries and different stuff like that.
That's
the water. What about the water situation? Do you always drink bottled water?
Yeah. So, do I brush my teeth with bottled water? No, I didn't brush my teeth in Afghanistan or South America with bottled water. So I risk it. Most people do. So again, and look, so prior to going, also look at what shots, what diseases, is smallpox an issue in the area? COVID, are they having a big outbreak of COVID? And where? So look at what vaccines you should get prior to.
What about transportation? Like, do you just take any taxi or service call or service car? Do you rent a car? What did you do?
So we had a rental car. And again, they tried giving us the brand new Chevy Tahoe or the Land Cruiser, but most Americans drive those, or most, wealthy people drive those. So for us, we didn't want to put a target on our back or look like that. So we got what was called a Pajero. I think Mitsubishi made it. It looks like a little, typical SUV.
Yeah.
A little bit bigger than a Highlander, not quite as big as a Land Cruiser, but that's what we drove around. Not, typical, like non-tinted windows, just look like an average car for
that's a good point to pick a car that blends in. I know a family member came up and visited me from South America, and he was taking pictures of like Camaros and Mustangs and stuff like that. I'm like, what are you doing, man? Why are you taking pictures of these cars? It's just, they're every day here, but you go down to South America and you don't see that at all, unless it's like a Lamborghini here. You don't really see it that much. So so it just kind of know the country you're going in and what kind of blends in. You go over to Europe, BMWs and Mercedes are everywhere, Yeah,
your cabs are Mercedes.
Yep.
I always laugh when someone tries to high and mighty in their Mercedes. That's a taxi cab over in Germany. But anyways, so on with transportation too is a little part of that too is like know the culture, know what kind of income they have, how much money do they make. So in Jordan, only really like the wealthy or like middle class can afford a car. So kind of, look into that and know that, hey, you're falling into that category. Does your rental car company put a sticker on there? They all do in Jordan. So now you're more of a target. And then know your rental companies too. They try, there's a lot like in third world countries, or not just third world, international places, South America, Central and South America, the Middle East, Africa. Well, they'll try to rip you off. You'll bring the car back and, you get the car and it's already beat up. And I think for us, they're trying to say that we scraped the spare tire. Luckily, when we got the car, I just literally marked everything on the page because the car was had a lot of scrapes and dents and missing some items. But yeah, so just watch out for that scam. I always try to say too, like try to stay with like an enterprise or something that's an internationally based company, um, versus like you may pay a cheaper local mom and pop shop, but
Yeah, but you never
yeah.
know.
And rental cars right now, you're going to spend more on
And
rental cars than anything. It's going to probably cost more than your flight and hotel combined right now. Like rental cars are outrageously expensive right now. So, we did use Uber or a taxi. Uber, everywhere I've gone for the most part, unless it's like a third world country, um, Uber or Lyft is pretty much everywhere. So we did use Uber, and I think we took a cab a few times. But again, there's two of us traveling, so
which is another thing, you should always travel in at least pairs, if not more people.
yeah. So
what about, did you do any trains or buses or any public transportation?
no trains. We did do a ferry, so that boat across. That was a ferry that went from Aqaba, Jordan, so the southern tip of Jordan, into Egypt. And that ferry is loaded with migrant workers going to and from Africa into the Middle East and vice versa. Also large trucks, because you can't go around to get to the African continent, to Egypt. On the Sinai Peninsula, you have to go through Israel. Israel's not letting anyone through like that. So this barge service that that is something that we use. So you're in.
But that is one thing to think about, though. If you are going to use the train or subway or whatever while you're there, it's always good to get a map and kind of have a map with you, but also pre-scout your locations and your stops and stuff like that, so you're not overwhelmed when you're there trying to figure out what stuff says and where you're going and what you're doing.
Yeah, and look, I don't speak Arabic. I don't speak Arabic at all.
Definitely can't read it.
So, but hello, how are you? Thank you, please. Just try to learn their language, and try to pick up little phrases, because I can tell you, like, people appreciate it. It's the same thing here in the U.S. We get a lot of foreigners here, people who don't speak English, but as long as they're trying, I think it's awesome. So, even if it's just a simple hello.
Okay.
So learn the language a little bit.
I know we're running a little short on time, but I just want you to touch real quick on like tourist attractions, hospitals, and devices.
So I'm not a big touristy guy, even here in the States. So this is someone who's never been to Disneyland or Disney World, because I hate waiting in lines and I hate theme parks.
You poor kids.
Yeah. So I promised my wife one time, with the kids. So I'll have to take a lot of medicine to get through that day. But so tourist attractions, right? Like southern Jordan, the town of Aqaba it's a beach town, beautiful, some of the prettiest water I've seen. But so there's tourists there, and there's a lot of Roman artifacts in and around Jordan, biblical and other stuff like that. So they are there, and just know, just like anything else, know that you're going to a touristy area. I did go to the Dead Sea, so that is a touristy area. And I think you're going to meet people of all walks of life. And so if you just go there with a good attitude and, hey, talk to anyone and be friendly, they'll either talk to you or they won't. No big deal. You're a guest in their country. Hospitals, definitely know what type of hospitals there are.
If you need traveler's insurance and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, or just find out from your insurance company, what happens if, severely sick or something catastrophic happens, a natural disaster or some type of civil unrest breaks out, and I get shot. Where do I go? What do I do? And am I covered? I can tell you a lot of the hospitals in Jordan are government ran, but they're not as very well respected. So the most respected ones are the private run hospitals, where all the wealthy people go and the Americans and people with insurance go. So for military and expats, or for retired military, International SOS is the carrier for TRICARE overseas. So that's just a little bit. So, and then know your hospitals too, as far as what kind of trauma, what level, level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up. So what kind of trauma and what each one of those levels mean. So electronic devices. I always tell people don't bring your electronic devices. Depending on the country that you go to, bring a clean one or a throwaway one. So our work computer is over here charging. It's completely wiped before each international trip. So there's really not a whole lot on there. Try not to log on. Definitely don't log on to anything like your bank account information, your credit card information, anything that gives any of your PII, your identifiable information that can be used against you. Know that you're gonna, you might, someone like me, I know kind of sparks the international intelligence services. And so, okay, no big deal. But just know that, definitely run a VPN, look at secure communication devices, that kind of stuff. I know you and I talked, we use Signal a lot. I really hardly ever logged on to my email over there unless it was like something super important with work. I tried not getting on any of the cloud services stuff, based stuff either. But and then also depending on how long you're going to be there, you may want to look at getting a cell phone.
Yeah.
Or taking. I mean, you can take any iPhone that you want and pop out the SIM card and put a local SIM card in there with a data plan. But
and just realize that depending on the country, and you don't have the same rights again as you do here. With the U.S., they don't needing a warrant to get on most occasions into your phone and look through your stuff. Over there, there's countries that they're going to check, especially just because you're American. They're gonna scan it and download everything and then run it through their programs to see if there's something that pops. So
yeah. So again, don't be that asshole American.
Yeah.
Out there. So you're right. Stop them the minute you get on that plane and go into international water. So understand that just because you carry that blue passport, they don't have to. They don't even have to let you in if they don't want to.
Well,
and they don't have to grant you, a lot of things. So just do what's right. I like to have a good time. I like to have fun no matter where I go, both here in the States and internationally. And I've never had a problem. So just be smart about what you do and how you do it.
All right. I think we covered quite a bit of information today. We did a good overview of overseas travel. If you guys have any questions or anything, just hit us up at coffeesquadpodcast.com. You can contact us there. Check out our YouTube channel, Coffee Squad Podcast. Like, subscribe, follow, comment. Our videos are out every week as well as our audio. So appreciate you coming on, and I'll see you next week.
All right. Have a good one. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks.